Egyptian troops intervened. Only they got bogged down. That the king didn't die; he simply fled. The Saudis supported him, and the tribes, fought with him. And Nasser would call North Yemen Egypt's Vietnam, up to 70,000 troops at the highest point. After the June 1967 war, in which Egyptian forces were defeated, Nasser makes up with Saudi Arabia. Saudi King Faisal, ever forgiving, is willing to give money. Just take your troops out of North Yemen, and Nasser did. The prediction was that, obviously the North Yemeni Republic is going to fall. And in fact, Sana'a, the capital, was surrounded. The siege of Sana'a took place. And it may not have survived except for a intense but brief Soviet airlift. What's interesting is that the Republic did not collapse. It survived. And what happened was that a conflict resolution process took place, partly with the Saudis, and essentially the Republic agreed to let the royalists back in, absent the royal family itself. So here was a case when the troops leave, and the people whom they were defending, who seemed like they're on the point of collapse, actually survive. Now, could that happen? I think the question is more about Afghanistan. It strikes me that, do the Northerners want the Taliban back or not? If they don't, then it's possible that with support, that they may well, in fact, be able to hold on, at least in the north, because the alternative is so much worse. So, in other words, troop withdrawal doesn't mean that your ally is overthrown, not necessarily. As far as, and then, in the Wall Street Journal this past December, there was an article predicting the economic miracle in Iraq over the course of the next, 10, 20 years. More oil than Saudi Arabia, lots of oil to be found, whereas the Saudis' production was stagnant. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but, it's possible. In 1975, when we left Indochina, would anyone have predicted that 35 years later, that Vietnam would be an economic powerhouse that, integrated into the world economy, good trading partner of the U.S. In 1975, with Mao still alive, would anyone have predicted that China would be rivaling the U.S. as the world's leading economy by 2011? No. Now, it's not destined for anything like this to happen, but it is possible. And, looking back at the Vietnam War, considering what good friends we are with Hanoi now, it's like, what was it all about? What were we there fighting over? We seem to get along just fine now. Will it be like that in the future with the U.S. in Iraq or Afghanistan? I don't know. I just would like to say it's possible. Now, Russia, China, you asked about, should they be involved more? Certainly, Russia's opening the Northern Distribution Network to the U.S., in other words, American military materiel transiting across the former Soviet Union. I actually taught for 2 weeks this past March at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow and had lots of meetings with different people there. I'll tell you, in Russia, they are afraid that America is going to leave Afghanistan. Because if America leaves Afghanistan, who's going to suffer? Russia and Russian interests are going to suffer. In other words, that we're a long way away from Afghanistan. Russia is right there, and they have, they don't treat their own Muslims very well. There's a lot of authoritarian regimes in Central Asia. The Taliban seem to have their sights on these people. And so what the Russians want is for us to do the job, essentially. And they're very, very worried. The Chinese are worried. They don't really, China has aligned itself with Pakistan because of its rivalry with India. They both share this. But China is worried. In other words, if Pakistan insists on exporting radical Islam, What does this mean to Xinjiang? In other words, to the Uyghurs. How can they avoid it? How can they, in other words, like, okay, you people are good radicals, but these ones are bad radicals. It's sort of hard. So I think that as the U.S. presence declines, these countries are going to get more involved. Whether that's good or bad, they're simply going to have to.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, for that very thoughtful and insightful talk. A lot of food for thought here. And thank you all for joining us, especially the students from Pepperdine. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love these parallels with the past.
Well, thank you.
With,
that's one of the advantages of being old.
Having studied history. Iran will someday be a